donating money to poor people in Africa. We think that this debate extends to the point that we also have to have this social responsibility to also the community that you are engaged with. We have seen the cases, this is not only a donation to those communities that you cannot relate to, that's so far away from you, but also in those communities that you have messed up with, but those communities that in terms of corporate social responsibility that you have to have. We don't want to see such case like these civil societies and these people that have to come up and protest or sue these corporations like in the court and have to take years and years in order to get the cases forward. We want to have these. We want to deal with these cases from the beginning. We want to have these people. We want to have these corporations have this responsibility in terms of having the social responsibility. So our proposal is going to be very simple. We're going to make it mandatory for these people to have the CSR, for these people also to extend to the point that they have to have a social, environmental concerns, environmental responsibility. We also extend to any kind of things, even if you want to only talk about the donation, I'm going to engage with it as well. Even if you talk about only the idea that how, oh, this is a charity, this is only something you do out of your goodwill, but not out of your duty. We think that it's even better that we make it a duty, especially once we talk about how this initial step is not so much as a concern to these people. But once we have to force this at an initial step, we think it's better for us to do so. I agree with you that you said this is actually the government's role in terms of controlling these people. We're going to extend to the point that of course the government's role to actually control every single actor in society, also the corporations. Simply because you are labeled as being the legal persons but not the living persons does not mean that you can actually be exempted for this kind of social responsibility. Especially if you have a really big social impact on these people. The reason that it only came up in this century is because this is only when we have this kind of corporations that are so large to the point that they really exploit this kind of communities that they go in, for example. Or to the point that the government thinks that they have to have a law to catch up with the very modernized corporations and the way that they operate. So we think this is the way that we should deal with them. So let's go with it point by point first, right? Only the first idea, how they talk about how the tax is already enough, how the tax is already there for the people to begin with, right? But think the concept of tax already tells you that once you have more, you have to give more. That's why there's such a concept like progressive tax, for example. You have more salary, then you are richer, and you are more obligated to give up. You are more obligated to help the society, right? But secondly, we say even if you say the tax is already there, but we say this is a responsibility beyond just the salary or the money that you make, because you have a huge social impact that you have on these communities, which I'm going to elaborate later, right? But furthermore, we say that they're talking about how the corporations should not be the one to do it, right? So we say they exactly should not be the one to do it. You have to give me your reasons why this should only be the only single actor in society that should be exempted for being obligated for society to actually to do it, right? Not by basically saying that you should not be the one to do it. But lastly, we say that the profit that they get by hiring only new workers or new people to work in their factories or their companies is not enough. Because now you're only helping new people who don't have a job, but you don't deal with the mess that you have made, for example, with these communities that you go into. We have seen the cases, Mata Wood, for example, that how these factories and how these companies go in the mess of this particular area without caring about the environmental concerns and the people in that community at all. They also talk about how these corporations don't have the expertise to do it. Then we say they make them have the expertise to do it. Even if they don't have the expertise to do it, it doesn't mean that they don't do it. The government would not do it, right? The more people we have, the more that we can actually create this kind of expertise, right? There's no harm in having even more experts in doing so. Yes.
Ma'am, I think you missed a major distinction that we were making in our case, right? If a company goes and pollutes a river that a village is using or exploits someone, those are things which are illegal anyway, and the government will punish the company anyway. These are things that aren't included in the ambit of CSR or social responsibility at all.
That's direct harm that you also engage with, but there are also indirect harm that you can have, right? The idea that how you emotionally or like psychologically mess up with this community that you have. The buildings that you build, how it actually blocks this kind of atmosphere or the very community that people live in. It's not only about the very toxic that they directly just take in the stomach, right? But it's everything that you have to be socially responsible. It's not very hard to understand how to be moral. So firstly, what exactly is the characterization of these corporations to begin with, right? Why they should not be the one to be exempted? Because we take on the ground that once you are an actor within this society, we say even if you're legal persons, you should have this kind of responsibility. Tax is not enough. Even a normal person, you also should have this kind of responsibility. But furthermore, we think the government has this kind of role to control any kind of single actor in society who has a very huge impact on society, right? We talk about how you should not build night entertainment centers, for example, near the schools or near the hospitals. We also talk about how the government also have this kind of customers protections, for example, to help you. Also to control these very corporations, because they don't allow only the corporations to deal directly face to face with the customers, because they will lose out the very bargaining chip that they cannot deal with these corporations, right? But why do we only have to make it mandatory? Because we agree with you that if you don't make it mandatory, then not everyone will do it. The very role the government is to balance out the very profit and the very responsibility society have, right? Simply because you're poor, government does not exempt you because you have 50K salary for example. The government does not exempt you from paying tax, for example, because government recognizes that once you have this kind of capability, you live in society, you enjoy this kind of benefit, then therefore you also have to be socially responsible, right? But furthermore, we say this is very different from tax, right? On the idea that how tax only give out to balance out the poor or help the inferior people in society, but CSR, this kind of corporate social responsibility, goes directly to the very point of how they have messed up the community, for example, like environment, for example, that the very psychological effect that they have on this particular community, and how they develop these particular community, for example, right? So we think that the government's responsibility should be there to force them and balance out the cost and the benefit that they have with this community, and they should deal with the problems now, not later when the people come out and protest.